Welcome to Rooted Within with Lili and Dan, a podcast that shines a spotlight on positive change makers, sharing their stories of legacy, inspiration, and impact.
Damn.
Welcome.
Does the fact that we're both drinking vitamin C say anything about the state we're in?
Possibly.
At the moment?
It's the beginning of the event
Just so people
season
know
for many
what's here.
people. I think our life is sponsored by Barocca right now.
Oh my God. Tired but
yes.
good. Hectic.
Hectic.
So much for a quiet summer, huh?
Summer was brutal, as
Very
we all know,
brutal.
but now we're heading into the event season and things are kicking off again.
And
I'm back in the studio. I've not been in for a while because you've
Been a while.
done a couple solo.
Yeah, I did the last one solo. It's just
Yes.
not the same.
Oh, I know that's what everyone says when I'm
It's
not
just
around.
not the same.
Indeed.
Not
So
the
should we
same.
get cracking?
Let's get cracking. Who do we have in the
So
studio?
we've got someone who's actually become a very good friend of mine over the last couple of months. We've been able to hang out together. We've got Rocky in the studio. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, good. You're very, very welcome. I heard you had a bit of a traumatic experience getting here.
God, yeah, I got hit by a bus on the way here.
Like
Like
to be
literally
clear,
hit by a bus.
you weren't physically standing and got hit by
no,
a bus.
no,
It was
no,
car
like
to
my
car.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
What?
They merged into my
Because when you
lane.
said you got hit by a bus, I'm like,
What
how are
the
you
hell?
standing
I,
here?
I have a flair for drama. So.
I can concur. It's all part of the character. But thank you for coming, for making
for having
it.
me.
Yeah. How's things going?
Going well, yeah.
Yeah. You just got back from traveling.
I did.
Yeah, you went to Japan.
Right.
Oh, I
Amazing.
love Japan.
It's incredible.
It's fantastic.
Oh.
Yeah. I need to go back. Anyway, we often digress in this podcast, by the way. We go into like so many different tangents. But I guess just tell our listeners a little bit about yourself.
Who is Rocky?
Yeah, who is Rocky?
Rocky, God.
Rocky Balboa.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm almost 40 and I've spent the last, I don't know,
You don't look it.
20. Oh, thank you.
Yeah, there
So it's about the last 20 years trying to unravel who Rocky is,
Yeah.
And that is the question, really. It's interesting because having the life that I had, you sort of wrap yourself up in these different identities and these different ideas based on your family, based on your faith and how you were brought up. And then at some point, if you're lucky, if you're fortunate enough, you arrive at a truth, right? And you have to start unraveling.
Yeah.
You have to start taking apart what is and what isn't.
Some people
and what was
never
and what
take the time to
wasn't.
do that, you know.
Right. And it's rough. It's rough.
But also some people don't know they need to unravel.
This is the thing,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
How do you know you need to?
They're
If
so
you-
programmed.
Right. So I can honestly say that the real me began when I left home.
And when was that? And where was home, actually?
Right. Home was Texas in
Okay.
USA, right? And, I had a very big family, big Hispanic Muslim family.
Okay.
And,
Okay.
we grew up very conservative. We grew up very,
Hold on,
nurtured.
Hispanic Muslim.
Yes.
So that's what we're going to
Can we just stop for a second?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
That's not. Pardon my ignorance, but that's not
regular.
regular.
Right.
Because Hispanic is normally a very Catholic
Yes.
community.
Yes, and my family was.
Okay.
My family was Catholic. There was a huge conversion story. You're talking about more than about 100 people.
Okay.
Aunts, uncles, my grandmother, cousins. It started with my uncle who embraced Islam after he heard some Egyptian men talking in a bar and then approached them about the, propriety of, not talking about God in bars.
Yeah.
Then they invited him to a talk and he became Muslim. And then after that, he converted my grandmother and then all just,
What was it? What was it that converted everyone?
Each one of my family members talks about like a different thing that motivated them. My understanding is it took more than a few years for the whole family to convert. All of this began before I was even born.
Wow.
So it's kind of like a destiny, right? Then my parents apparently were the last ones to convert. Now, what I don't know for sure is whether I was a baby or I was just like a toddler, but I know I was very young when my parents converted to Islam. And the story goes that my mother actually had me baptized because she's like, just in case,
Yeah.
just in case we don't want to stay here.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we ended up, I guess sticking to it and, committing to the
Hold on a
religion.
minute. So
100
is it?
people.
Wait, I'm gonna go a bit
on.
personal here.
Yeah, go for it.
Islam requires a.
Not requires.
No, doesn't require the snip?
Doesn't require. Well, actually, okay, I take that back. Some say yes.
I'm sort of thinking about the toddler here right now.
Right. No. See, I'm not.
Okay.
But, yeah. But it
See,
was
we
recommended.
went personal.
We
We already
definitely
went
digress
personal.
already. So now everybody
But it
knows
was
about
recommended
Rocky.
that I do it. When I got married, the leader of our mosque, the imam, he's like, he's like, all Muslims. He goes, every single prophet from Adam all the way to Muhammad was circumcised. He's like, so all Muslims should be.
Yeah.
And so you'll notice that anybody that's born into a Muslim family. And then I asked my father, I think when I was 15, I just walked right up to him. I remember he was watching TV and I said, "Hey Dad, how come I'm not circumcised?" And he said, Looked at my mom. He said, "Why didn't we circumcise him?"
Like, that's like they
And
forgot.
then my mom was like, "It was too expensive," because it's considered cosmetic in the U.S.
Yeah.
My oldest brother is, but he was born in Berlin.
Okay.
My father was, in the military, so when he served there, the hospital just did it. Like,
Yeah.
I think without even asking. So.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I'm still trying to wrap my head around the fact that 100 family members all converted
huge.
kind of like simultaneously over a period of
Right.
time.
Well, there's a combination of conversions, but then also being born into.
Got you, yeah.
Right.
of
Now, the
course.
problem with that is that Islam, at its heart, right, says that each person has to be guided sort of like on their own or
Yeah,
through God.
it's a choice.
Right. And the more I thought about that, I'm like, yeah, I never had like my conversion story or like I chose Islam story. But you notice all across the world of Islam that, people who are born to Muslim families, you just sort of inherit the religion,
Yeah.
whether they like to admit it or not. This
Yeah.
is the reality.
Well,
And
I
with many
remember
religions.
because I come from a Muslim background. My parents have never been very religious, but growing up, I remember it was really confusing for me because I went to a Christian school. So I was at school and I was brilliant. I knew all the verses. I could recite Psalms 23 or whichever one that was. And we used to have to sing, all these Christian songs and stuff. And one time, and then I remember I'd go home and I'd hear, stories. We'd go to Bahrain and my extended family were religious. And I found it very confusing. And then I remember one time I got in trouble because I then felt like I was doing the wrong thing if I was doing anything Christian.
Right.
Got you.
Not that my parents ever said anything, but and we stood up and in class we were singing some I don't know what, and I was miming it, and my teacher saw that and said something to my mom, saying that was a bit odd, and I ended up having a conversation. My mom sort of approached the subject with me, and I'm like, she said to me, what was that about? I go, well, which am I? Am I Christian or am I Muslim? And my mom, the best gift she ever gave me, and I love her for it. She turned around, she goes, well, listen, we're from a Muslim background, our heritage, or just as a country, predominantly Islam. And she's like, but what I would recommend for you is, you can be whoever you want to be. She goes, but before you make that choice, I would advise you to learn what you can from every religion,
Yeah, then you can make
and
that
then
choice.
and then decide which one. And then she goes, but for like her and my dad are just more spiritual. And she goes, for us, it's ultimately, and she said, every religion, if you look at it, at the heart of it is to treat others the way you'd want to be treated, treat good,
Yeah.
And she goes, and that's how we live our lives.
Absolutely.
But and then sort of never chose anything.
But how was it growing up in Texas? To a
It was
large
to
family.
be
Muslim?
a Muslim
Because
kid.
I'm
It was
assuming
nice that I
Texas
had-
is very religious. It's quite Christian, I guess.
It is, but I was born into like the far west of Texas, right? A place called El Paso.
Okay.
Yeah, so very Hispanic, very sort of like liberal.
Okay.
But I remember having lots of Christian friends. I remember being in second grade, hearing about Halloween parties and Christmas parties and Valentine's, and not being able to partake in any of it. We had pepperoni pizza parties and couldn't do that either.
Yep.
So it was nice growing up because I had a big family, so
Yeah.
I wasn't really lacking any sort of interaction with.
But it
with
wasn't
other
confusing?
people. What was confusing to me was my own feelings, right? Because I recognized by age 5. I even remember my very first crush in kindergarten. Okay, I knew I was gay without knowing that was the word
Okay.
For it.
Yeah.
Right. I knew that I liked boys. I remember third grade.
We all like boys.
Speak for yourself over there. What are you talking about? Haram.
I remember in third grade is when everybody from my class started, kissing. We would go out to recess.
Third grade.
Third grade.
Jesus.
There was this game
It's
they
like
would
young
play.
in Texas.
Yeah, there was. We have one of the highest pregnancy rates, by the way.
Okay.
But so I remember there was this part of the jungle gym. It was like a big red net, right? That would just hold you could hold probably 30 kids in there, and my whole class would just go and they would line up on the outside. And I just found out about this game, so I'm standing on the outside watching, and they would call a girl. It was kind of like spin the bottle without the bottle.
Yeah.
And then they
Wow.
would just pick a girl and pick a boy. And they would, they would walk to the middle of the net and they would kiss. And everybody would go, ooh. So I remember I did it, right? Because somebody comes and somebody else comes and they kiss and I go, ooh. And one of this jackass boy from my class, I'll never forget his face. He turns to me and he says, shut up, Rocky. We all know you're sexy for boys. And I was like, that was the first time
Third grade. Wow.
that I realized, holy crap, people know.
Yeah. What
you
you're
know-
feeling inside.
Right.
Hold on, third grade. How old are you?
8.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's young. Yeah.
Also, I had some, pretty traumatic stuff happen within my family. So, my father is a very strict, Hispanic military Muslim.
Wow.
So a lot of
how many
stuff-
how many more stricks can you put in a row?
Yeah. But look, before I go any further on my father, because there will be some stories about him. He is a lovely man who loves me, and the whole gay thing is hard for him. But he has declared, "I love you no matter what." He's like, "It's just, please."
Oh,
it's
we
just
love you,
hard,"
Dad.
Yeah. So he's as supportive as
Which is
way
fair.
more than I expected him to be. Right.
That's all you can expect, really.
Right.
No,
But
he still
that's
loves you.
amazing. That's
Yeah.
actually amazing, especially from the framework that he's grown up
Right.
from.
course.
Right.
Where you're literally going to counter or your lifestyle, your choices,
Everything,
is counter
yeah.
to everything he believes in.
Yeah. And he grew up in a neighborhood, in a place where if a boy even held his arm wrong, he got jumped
Punched.
by the
Well, this
the
one I
entire
say because,
neighborhood.
you hear the stories and stuff Texas is not the most liberal of places in the world.
And a lot of it's absolutely not. Right. But some the major cities in Texas tend to be very liberal.
All right,
and
so
a
you
little
get
bit
this, you
more-
get another one of the boys scream out saying, "We know you like boys." Then what happened?
Well, he just he didn't really say it to everyone. He just turned and to me, over
Right.
his shoulder. And I don't know. I guess at that moment I kind of realized I guess other people kind of see something. And from that day on, I was very careful. I was always, I was like a super sweet kid. Everybody always framed me as nice and polite. But I think a lot of that came from, I became a yes person. I wanted to please people for sure, and I never wanted to make waves. One of my favorite uncles, he turned to me one day and he says, "You know what I love about you?" He said, "I love that you don't mess with nobody." He said, you see people, he goes, you don't poke fun at people, and if they don't poke fun at you, he's like, and I like that about you. You treat people the way you want to be treated. And I took that to heart. I was like, wow, I guess that is me. And I've always, even now, I feel that way. I'm the type of person, I can be very nice, and then the second I feel offended by someone, I will go to the extreme, because in my mind, I'm like, I would have never done or said what you just did or said, and I take
the
it
principle of
very,
it.
very personally. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm working on that.
It's a work in progress.
Right.
So then what happened after that I guess third grade
So
experience?
third grade, fifth grade, I remember sixth grade being kind of all that, I guess era in my life was a bit of a blur. But
You're still trying to figure yourself out, I guess, at this time.
There's a lot of convincing, right? Like I would harbor these secret feelings and whatever, but then I remember every sixth grade was when everybody started declaring who they liked, right? Eric likes so-and-so, and Janice likes so-and-so, and then everybody was like, who do you like? And you had to like someone. So I remember
But were you trying to assimilate by then?
Yeah, absolutely. Trying to assimilate, trying to well, I like so-and-so. And then I remember thinking, oh God, I could get in trouble. Because my father was if I ever see you even near a girl, he's like, little did he know,
Wow.
You're like, well, I didn't get near a girl, Dad.
But there was a boy.
I did what you
funny.
asked.
It's funny because growing up, all the way up through even university, girls, I just always got along better with them.
Yeah.
Always. I broke a few hearts along the way. And I loved talking to girls. I loved it because I just felt like they got me. I just felt like they understood
But
me.
did you date?
The closest I got to dating was 7th grade, when they said, oh, this girl likes you and I liked her. And then, okay. And then we went to the back of the band room and they said, she wants to make out with you. And I was like, oh my God, I had never made out before. And this is a big thing. This is like your rite of passage.
Like proper French kissing?
Yeah, I don't know. Back in my country, we called it green. You were green.
Yeah.
Up until, remember this? Oh, he's still green. She's still green. So they, I met her at the back of the band room. And I remember there was a ledge and everybody was watching from the top. And she's she grabbed my face and started making out with me. And the whole time my eyes were open and I was just looking around oh, this isn't terrible. But, I didn't.
It's not really doing it for you.
Yeah. So go through high school and then have a few boy crushes, but obviously not something I can talk about, not something I can act on, not something I can, and it was rough. That's when I really started to feel my emotions sort of start to spin out of control. I had a friend who was a very, very good friend, but who I was also madly in love with. And
We've all had that.
And he's inviting girls around me, and I'm trying not to behave jealous, but I can't help it, and it got to a point where we stopped talking for months because I said or did something, and I couldn't. You can't express what you want to express.
So something else comes
There's so
out.
much damage you can do with that.
Did he ever know?
as I come out, right, to certain people and certain circles, like I find that people are like, yeah,
We knew.
Yeah.
So
They
I'm
generally
wondering,
do.
actually, when I got married, that friend, he told me, "Oh man, we're so proud of you." He's like, "We were worried for a second," and then I just kind of like I didn't really,
threw it, yeah.
take that comment for what it really meant, and thinking back on it, I go, "Oh, yeah." So they had
Hold
an
on,
idea.
You got
And
married.
then I was going to say, like, I'm
You
going to
got
pick up on this
married.
one
I got
because you
married.
just fast forwarded quite quickly because you were talking about, high school.
Right.
The first kind of like rite of passage of making out with your first ever girl, dating a few people. Oh, and now I got married.
Yeah. So
What happened?
So university was crazy. Probably a year and a half or 2 years after I started university, I told my parents I wanted to get married. Now, let me just frame this by saying,
Whoa.
I was an incredibly devout Muslim.
Mm-hmm.
I was the type of Muslim that I would teach at Sunday schools when I was 18. I was always talking very publicly about things. I was selected many times to, publicly speak about things at my mosque.
And you truly believed in it.
I
So
believed that I truly believed.
Okay.
This is the thing.
Yeah.
So keep in mind, I have a very tight circle of family where every gathering, every outing is surrounded by Muslims. And it's like, hey, we're at, Texas Roadhouse, but it's time to pray. So, we go and we pray out in public and all of those things. Then, I even had family members who would ask me for like advice and, stuff about religion. And one of the huge issues in Islam, even today, okay, is that the young men are encouraged, almost pushed to get married very young. So I took this to heart, and I thought, I saw all of my friends in university having girlfriends, and these are Muslim friends, okay? And I was like, oh, how could they? Like, it's so haram. And I was just, I was feeling lonely is what it was. But at the time, I was telling myself that it was because I didn't want to fall into the same trap. So I walked up to my mother. I was 20 years old, and I said, I'm ready to get married. And this, most parents would be like, what? Like, but in a Muslim family, it's like, great, cool. Let's see what we can
Let's
find.
do it. Let's go.
Yeah.
Let's go shopping.
Right. So at the time, I was the president of the Muslim Student Association at the
Okay.
university. And we had an event. And this older woman who was at the university, she had a friend with her at the mosque that day. We were selling shirts or something. And she walked by with her friend. And I see this girl, this woman, right? And I was like, oh, she's pretty. And that's all I thought. She was pretty. She had a nice smile. And then actually, I was mentoring a kid at the time. And the kid I was mentoring was the son of the lady, right? The older lady. And he says, hey, Rocky, are you married? Are you single? And I said, yeah. He goes, you should hook up with my mom's friend. And I smacked him because he was like a 14-year-old kid. I'm like, hey, be quiet. We're in a
Yeah.
mosque. Don't do that. The next day, I was because we had a shuttle that would take us from the parking, to the university. So I get onto the shuttle and I have my headphones on and I'm just standing up. I'm sitting down actually, and I see a woman get on. And I say, oh, I need to give her my seat. So I stand up and I kind of, and I briefly look at her face and she smiles at me and she mouthed something. And I was like, I didn't hear what she said, had headphones on. She sits down and I'm standing. And then I look at her and she has like a scarf wrapped around her shoulders. And I said, that's the girl from yesterday.
Ah, okay.
And I'm like,
Funny how the universe works.
funny how the universe works. I'm like, I'm talking about getting married. The kid makes a joke. And that same girl, I come on this bus every single morning to get this.
And this is the
particular
first time
class.
you've ever
This is
seen
the
her
first time
bus.
I've seen her.
Yeah.
So I took off my headphones. I said, hey, excuse me. And she said, hi, yes. And I said, yeah. I said, I saw you. She goes, yeah, we met yesterday. I said, oh, okay. And then I was like, how did you like, and just kind of like small
Yeah.
talk for like 3 minutes because the shuttle gets there quickly. She gets off and she leaves. So I called the lady because I had her number, the older lady. I said, hey, so your friend, I said, I'm the Muslim Student Association president and I need her information. And she says, oh, well, and I said, well, actually, let me be honest with you. I said, I'm asking on a more personal level. And she says, oh, and any Muslim knows
They know what
immediately
Exactly what
this
you're
means.
asking for.
So she says, oh my God, her name is this. She's this old. She's working on her master's. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. So what does she do? She turns, she calls her. And she says, oh my God, you just became Muslim like 3 months ago and already everybody wants to marry you. So this lady, now my ex-wife was like,
Because
"What
she
are
converted
you
into
talking-"
Islam also.
Yes, she had converted maybe 3 months before we met.
Okay.
Yeah. So she's like, what are you talking about? So, things move on and we schedule calls and we're calling and my father is just like so proud. And he would even make jokes. He'd walk by when I'm on the phone with her and he would go, ooh, Casanova, things like that. And it was a good feeling because I had the approval of my community. I had the approval of
Yeah.
my
You were
friends. I
s-
had
you
the
were
approval of
seen.
my, right. I was seen, all the while, convincing myself that and she, amazing lady, which we'll get to later. But absolutely fabulous woman, incredibly smart. And she was everything. Honestly, looking back now, I wouldn't change a thing about my past because she was everything that I needed at that time.
Yeah.
And I still say to this day that 80% of the man I am today is because of her.
Yeah, that's incredible.
She raised me in many ways and taught me how to properly be a man, and not the type of man that like, oh, you got to be tough.
Yeah,
and
not the alpha.
That wasn't her.
Yeah.
She taught me other things,
But how to be
many
true.
other things. Right. And so we get married. I'm 21 years old, and I know for a fact. In fact, I think I mentioned to a teacher when I was like 17 or 18, I want babies, I want kids, and she was like, "What's wrong with you?" But I always knew
But
I
it's like
wanted
you
kids.
do know how at that point, obviously you know how babies are made.
Yeah. And the fact that I'm in a heterosexual marriage, I
Yes.
thought I'm cured. Like
Yeah.
I really saw it that way. I
Wow.
really saw it as like I'm never gonna have to worry about this anymore. Like I have my protection. Islam says I have my shield.
Yeah.
If I keep praying, if I keep spending time with my wife, all of these things will just go away.
But were you still having feelings for men or crushes?
Yeah,
on
of
men?
course.
Yeah.
But at the
You tried
time,
to
I guess
suppress
I
them.
didn't see a whole lot of men other than, passing
Yeah.
people in classes. The men that I hung out with, my close friends, were all going away to like medical school and different universities.
So were you in love?
with my wife?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I believed I was, but I wasn't.
But at the
But you
time,
loved
At the
her.
time,
At the time,
yeah, I
yeah.
really liked her. And then I just grew to love her, and even now, like we're very, very good friends.
Yeah. Yeah.
Close, I would say. I still love her. I can
well,
say
she sounds
that.
like your best friend.
Yeah, I can still say it. Although it's not as easy to talk to her just because of she's married.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she's married to a very different kind of.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's a bit harder. But other than that, like, we talk all the time. Sometimes we make jokes and things like that. So it's nice.
But you talked about kids.
Right. Talked
'Cause
about
you
kids.
wanted kids.
Talked to her. She's like, no, what's wrong with you? She's like, I'm 25. She was 4 years older than me when we got married. She's like, I'm 25, you're 21. Are you crazy? Like, we need to travel. We need to do this. I was like, yeah, but I want kids, So I remember she was like on birth control, and then we tried different contraceptives and stuff like that. And then a couple of times I knew she had forgotten. I'm like, and I to this day, I don't know for sure if she sort of did that on purpose, like just to pretend, because she's the type of person, like, she'll pretend that something isn't real or happening so that she can sort of claim that it's not her fault later, kind of thing. Not in a bad way, right? But
Yeah.
I forgot my contraceptive today, and it's like, okay, So she ended up getting pregnant less than a year after we got married.
Oh wow.
And I remember she cried. She was like, I can't believe it. And I'm just like smiling
like,
ear to
"Yay!"
ear. Like I could not. I'm like, it's okay. Like you're good. And like she's crying and I'm like laughing because I'm so incredibly happy. So we had our first child. And yeah, things were going great. But then when my first child turned about 3 years old, we hit our 7-year itch. No, 7 year? No, I'm sorry. Like 3-year itch or 4-year itch, whatever they call it. And we went through some hard times. She went through a bit of an identity crisis, I would call it, because, being Muslim and then you have a gay husband, which she didn't know at the time, right? I wasn't telling her that she was beautiful enough. I wasn't, giving her enough attention. And I was just like, it got to the point where I was I had to consciously put those things in my head. Tell her she's beautiful. Tell her you love her. Tell her this. Tell her that. And it became very obvious,
'Cause it wasn't coming naturally.
Right, it was not coming naturally, and I just couldn't see the issue. I'm like, I married you, right? Like, that's that man answer. Like, well, I married you,
Oy.
And then this woman had so many things going in her life and so many things that she wanted to be in her personality that she compromised for me.
Yeah.
I saw her change over the years, and it wasn't until I divorced her that I went, wow, she really did sacrifice a lot for me, But yeah, we buy our first house, we buy our second house, we have our second and third kids, and things are going smoothly. At this point, we're like the idol couple in my family, like the power couple. Like when my brothers and sisters and cousins would get married, they would come to us for advice. They would talk to us. Even my older cousins and my parents, everybody would come. At some point, our house became like sort of a center where people would come for like Eid celebrations and Thanksgivings and family dinners and prayers and all that stuff, So I'm kind of going through the whole thing, and it's like it becomes very mundane, very just everyday. And it's not the marriage, it's the everything. It's the family life, it's the me having, I remember breaking down one day. Like, I went to the house and I just had this huge, heavy depression that I just cried and I cried, and she's like, "What's wrong with you?" Like, she's like, "Oh my God." And she's trying to comfort me, and I'm just crying and crying. And I told her, I hate myself. And I didn't know why.
I was just saying, why did you hate yourself at the time?
I couldn't pinpoint
Because
like
you weren't being
a source. I couldn't pinpoint I just couldn't. I was like, oh, and I think at the time, I thought maybe I just hate going to my job every single day and doing the same things and not feeling like, a teacher that, is supposed to be like a really good teacher. And I don't know. At the time, I don't remember what excuses I made for myself. But looking back now, I'm like, that's exactly what
of course.
it was. So she had traveled to the UAE when our oldest daughter was about 3 or 4. And she came back saying, "Oh my God, like, you should see this place. It's amazing." They had just finished the Burj Khalifa. Dubai still wasn't what it is today, but she was like, it's amazing for families, like Muslim families. And I'm thinking, wow, and time passed and we just never did anything with that. Then around the 2016 elections, it's not just the fact that it was like a particular candidate. It was people who didn't live or from the US really don't understand like the types of rifts that whole election caused. Like, people that I thought were friends and that I like, friendships were ended over,
and
the election.
Those rifts still exist.
Yes, because I don't know if it was just the rhetoric that happened and the talk that happened, that certain people with certain types of thinking felt empowered and they were no longer scared to express racist ideologies, sexist ideologies, homophobic ideologies, all of it. And it just felt like a place I thought, you know what? I'm tired with work. Like, it's not what it used to be. I don't feel myself progressing. And then this is happening. Trump had just won. And I looked at her and she looked at me and I said, you know what? It's time to go. I said, if we don't do this now, we're never going to do it. Now, there is a belief in Islam that when you make an intention to do something and you do the thing for that intention, then it gives you good deeds, right?
Yeah.
And that's what the thing becomes.
Yeah.
It takes the form and the shape and the color of the thing that you want most, that you intend it for. The reason I say that is because when we made the intention to move here, we did our prayers, we did our du'as, right, and everything. And we said, we're moving to make a better place for our family, to become more religious, okay? To, really embrace an Islamic lifestyle in a place where Arabic is the language, and there's a mosque on every street corner, and you can hear the adhan in the streets. So when we landed, that's exactly what I wanted, or at least what I thought I wanted. And so I see the mosques, and I see the fancy perfumes and the oud, and I see all the kandoras, and I see the Arabic, and I run. I'm like, waking up at 5 a.m. to go pray at the mosque, because in my hometown we had one mosque. I lived 40 minutes away from it.
Wow.
So I would go pray at the mosque. Then I start to realize, like, wow, like it's not the same. Friday prayers with my family is very different. I go to the mosque and my whole family is there. And they say, oh, let's go to Burger King after. Let's go to this person's house after. Let's go to the mall. And I didn't realize what a huge part of it my family was.
The lifestyle.
The Eid, the Ramadan, everything changed. Everything changed. But then at the same time, I started realizing that, I didn't have my family's filter. I didn't have the lens that, I was always looking through when they were around. And their reinforcement, because, we have family police.
Of course.
People who ensure that you do and say and act exactly how you're supposed to, and if you don't, they will let you know. So that wasn't around anymore. And while I'm thinking I'm safe, right? I'm thinking I'm just going through this. I make a friend. Okay, this friend was I met him at a barbershop, and work was nice because I would finish every day by like 2 p.m. And I would go to the barbershop. And he wanted to learn English, and I wanted to learn Arabic, so we hung out a lot. In fact, I was probably at that barbershop 4 or 5 times a week after work.
You probably have the best haircut in town.
Hanging out. Yeah, hanging out with him, talking. And then I started to sort of feel sympathy for him and, like the situation he was in with work and pay and all those things. I started, like doing small things. Started very small, like bringing him some food or taking him on a trip to the mall to buy something real quick. Then I took him on a trip to Dubai, took him to the airport. Then I started buying him bigger gifts, and I started spending more time with him. And I fell in love. is what I believed, right?
Yeah.
And my wife, she would notice, of course, because she's a very perceptive woman. I didn't notice. I didn't think I was doing anything wrong. The other thing about the UAE that people don't really realize is that the lifestyle of men is different than what you would see heterosexual men do where I'm from. When you're a family man, you're a family man all the time back home. You know, you have dinners with your family, you go out with your family, you come home to your family. The only time you don't see your family is when you're at work. That's it. My father used to say, I don't have friends. I have family. I have coworkers and I have family, and that's it. And I don't spend time with my coworkers. And I didn't really believe that, and even my wife, we didn't believe that. But you know, he used to get upset with us. Like she would go out, she'd say, "Hey, I'm girls' night out. Yeah, I can't believe your wife is going out. You know, and what are you doing?" And things like that. And he at one point believed that's why we got divorced, because we were spending too much time apart and all of that. So I was spending a lot of time with him, and my wife started to say, you know, something's off with you. Like when you're here, you're not here. I can tell. Like I don't know what's up with you. Then she knew I was spending time with him, right? Now let me make it very clear that nothing romantic ever happened between the two of us, but I was just spending lots of time with him. In fact, at some point, I would even know when his days off and his breaks were, and he would be at his apartment with the other, you know, people that worked with him. And he would say, yeah, come in. And he would say, you can lie down in that bed and sleep. And there were like 4 of us just taking a nap, and I would, you know, they would get up and go to work, and I would follow them. Just spending, like, looking back, I'm like, wow, just ridiculous amounts of time. And like, I didn't.
Slightly unnatural.
Very unnatural. But for me, it's like the most natural thing. I'm like, wow. Now, the other thing is that straight Hispanic men, when I grew up, were very like, bro, you know, clap on the back. And these men, especially, you know, Middle Eastern men, even heterosexual Middle Eastern men, are very affectionate. You know, they'll touch you on the back of your neck, they'll hug you, they'll even kiss you on the cheeks. Yeah. You've seen, of course, the nose kiss between Emirati men.
So it was filling a real gap for
Yeah,
you.
it's filling a huge gap. And I'm thinking like, wow, this is amazing. And I'm thinking I'm cool. Like religion, everything is on everything. Yeah, everything. But when I'm with my family, I'm restless. I'm like, I'm even annoyed. Like, and I feel so shitty about that. Like, looking back on it now, but I was just, you know, couldn't wait to get back. So I would have plans. I'd say, hey, I'm gonna go out with so and so for cinema, for dinner, for a movie, whatever. And she'd be like, okay, fine. And she would of course, like, yeah, you know. Then that's when she finally says, you know, something's going on with you. Like, I don't know what this is. Then I think at one point she knew it was him, and she's like, he made a comment, or like, I used to bring him around with the kids and stuff, and he would come to the house and cook for us, or we would cook together. And I don't know what he said or did one time in front of her, but it prompted her to say, is he gay? And she said it in a way that was meant to be hurtful. An insult and hurtful. And I turned to her and I said, what's wrong with you? Like, why would you say that? Like, that's awful. And she's like, I'm just saying, you know, he's like this and like that. And I knew it was like a jab at me, because she was, you know, trying to, like, you know, balance it out. But in the end, one day we had gone out, he and I, with all his friends. We did a barbecue or something, and I came back home very late, and she says, look, I remember she was lying in bed. I thought she was asleep. I lie down in bed next to her, and she says, look, I don't know what's up with you. I don't know what's wrong. She says, but I'm going home. I'm taking the kids, and I'm going home. And I remember my heart just like, because that was the one thing that I was horrified of, losing my kids with this secret and everything that I had, you know. And she's like, at this point I had come out to like 2 of my best friends, one at work and another one, you know, who was like our neighbor, as a matter of fact. And I remember them saying something to me like, when you tell your wife? And I'm like, okay. I told you guys I came out, and I remember the feeling was just like, you know, the relief. So I thought I was never gonna have to come out to anybody ever again. Yeah. And he's like, it's okay, like, you know, cool, but we're just letting you know. You know,
because it is inevitable.
You're not living your truth. It's inevitable, is what they said. Yeah. So that night, she tells me, I'm leaving. You stay here. You get out whatever you need to get out of your system, but we're going to leave. So I remember thinking, shit, this is it. It's now or never. So I remember I told her, okay, listen, I have to tell you something. So I took a deep breath, and I remember, like, I buried my face in the pillow, and I went, ugh. And then I came up, and I said, I'm gay. And like the moment it came out of my mouth, the tears started coming down, and I started sobbing. And she sat there quietly, and I was crying and crying. And she says, you know, I think I always knew. And right there, I was like, oh my God, like, you know, like I'm a horrible actor. Right? And the whole experience was just surreal. Like I got to talk to her about things. We stayed up talking for probably.
What was her emotion when she said that?
It was, honestly, I was a bit surprised. I was like, really? Like, I didn't say that, but I'm thinking, you know, like I thought I was great at covering it up. But anyway, she sort of sat there and listened, and then she said a few things. I said a few things.
Was she angry?
She wasn't angry. In fact, I have to say she sounded
Relieved.
I told her, I just need you to understand. It's not that I don't love you. Like I love you incredibly. I go, it's just this one thing, you know, like I don't know how to make that make sense. And so she said a few things, and I told her, do you want to be alone right now? And she said, yeah, I think I need to be alone right now. So I left the
process.
room. Yeah, I left the room. I went into the living room. I remember I turned on Game of Thrones, and I heard her crying all night. And I mean all night, nonstop, from like, that was probably close to 1 a.m. to like 6 a.m. I just heard the sobs, and my heart was just like, oh.
Yeah, how are you feeling at that time?
I'm thinking, okay, like I'm glad I told her. Then you have the doubt. You're like, shit, should
Was
I have
that the
even
right
said
thing?
anything? Was it the right thing to do? Like, what's gonna come of this?
Because you can't take it back now.
Right now, I
You've
can't
said
take it back. It's out. Can't take it back. So you know, we have some family things planned that day, and she's, you know, it's the day after, like, you know, the day after like a really big fight you have with someone. That's what it felt like. Can I talk to her? Can I touch her shoulder? Like, is she okay? And she was responding to me, and then a couple of times it would look like she was, you know, like she wanted to punch me, and then
Gosh,
the
she
next
must have
few,
been going through
right,
a world
of
of confusion
emotions,
and
right.
emotion. And
At some point she says to me, look, she goes, we can't go home. And I said, really? And she said, yeah. She goes, we're gonna stay here. She goes, you can't live your life the way you want when you're with your family. And I thought, that was the first time I thought, holy crap, like she's right. Like, maybe a lot of this happened because of all the policing and everything.
can I just say, she's an incredible woman.
She is an incredible woman. She gets even more incredible as this story goes
Wow.
on. But there was one point where, you know, we decided we were going to try and make it work. We were going to try a few things. And she sent me this video, and I told her, you know, the acceptance of it. Like, she goes, so you feel accepted? And she was like asking really good questions. So what about this? What about that? What about my brother and my nephews? And like, they make me feel like, okay, so maybe it's just an acceptance. She was exploring all of these different possibilities. One of the possibilities she explored was, she says, hey, I found this psychologist, and he specializes in, you know, getting people to overcome. And I go, hold on. I go, when we talked about this, I go, you told me there was nothing wrong with me.
Was she trying to fix
I
you?
go, now you're talking about conversion? She goes, oh. So I could tell she felt bad about it, but I'm looking back, I'm like, I understand, you know, imagine the desperation. At this point, we had been married for 14 years.
That's a long time.
Right. A very
and
long
three
time.
kids.
3 kids, 2 houses, you know,
Well,
2 car payments.
her world
what
just
has
fell apart
changed?
overnight.
Right. I mean, we had been through everything together. And as we're talking about all these things, we're talking about different ways to make the marriage work. Like, we could try this, we could try this, we could try that. We tried some things for probably
How do you make
weeks.
a gay man and a heterosexual woman marriage work?
Right. Then I think that was eventually the conclusion and the question that we arrived at. So one day, I remember I had come home late, and she said, I can't do this.
Okay.
She goes, I tried. She goes, let's just get a divorce. So I said, and I remember, even today, I still feel guilty about the amount of relief
You
I
felt
at
because you were
that.
going to be free.
Right.
And also that she made the decision.
Yeah.
Right.
At that
That's
moment,
why
I
I
guess.
kind of felt like it was
Yeah.
off of me.
Yeah.
Like, oh, but you know, in reality, of course, it takes 2 to tango, right?
Yeah.
So, we talked for a very long time. We talked about, don't worry, like, see the kids whenever you want, this and that. Let's just go get the papers done. Da, da, da. So in my mind, I'm beaming. I'm thinking, wow, like, she and I are gonna stay close. We're gonna still talk every day. We're gonna see the kids. It's gonna be great.
Nothing's going to change. I'm
You're
just
gonna
going to
get
be
the
in a different
freedom which
house.
you've been
It's
craving
exactly
for.
how I felt, or what I believed.
Oh, how little you knew.
Oh, how little I knew. So I leave the house. I remember I brought my 2 kids with me. We told my 2 youngest children that Daddy's gonna move to an apartment so he can be closer to work. We took my daughter out, and we explained to her that we were getting a divorce. My daughter tells me this day, she goes, you realize I had no clue what you guys were talking about, right? She goes,
How old was she at that age?
she was 12 at the
Okay.
time. She cried. We took her to a Krispy Kreme, and I'm just like, wow. Looking back, like I'm like this, just we did everything wrong. You know, like you take them, instead of giving them a safe place where they can express.
You took them
feelings
out
and
in
whatever, we
public
took
where
them
they
out in
can't
public,
react.
Try to make her happy. And I remember at that point just adopting this policy that I was just always going to be honest with, especially with my children, no matter how hard, no matter how, you know, big or whatever, because honesty is a much better place to come from, you know.
Yeah.
And at this point, I'm dealing with the layers that we talked about and trying to figure out which parts of me are real, which parts of me are not, which parts of me do I actually believe, which parts of me. And I said, oh, cool. I can be gay, and I can, you know, I met lots of men, lots of gay Muslim men, you know, who are like, yeah, you know, I met a few that even said, my mother knows, my father knows. They told me, just as long as you keep your Islam, you're fine.
Yeah.
You know, keep your
So
Islam.
It's like keep two lives.
that how it's what's the word? Justified.
Right.
Because with Islam, it's very black and white when it
Yes.
comes to that, right?
There are people arguing that it's not, but at
Okay,
the time, yeah.
but at the
So
time, it was-
the idea is that you make a sin, you just pray for it, and everything is cool.
Okay,
You
so
know,
that's how
kind
it
of
was,
like the
alright.
idea. So, you know, I'm going through that entire process. I'm going through all those experiences, and I'm meeting different guys of different backgrounds, and I'm hearing all of these stories, and I'm sort of like collecting these narratives, and still believing that I'm, you know, in Islam and everything. And then I just slowly sort of like the best way that I can explain it is I really love the imagery of like an unfolding and to see what's there.
Yeah.
You know, at the very end. Like
Yeah.
you unfold and
Like the
then
unwrapping of a
I'm
gift.
like, wow. I think I've always been sort of like an atheist. and let me, you know, people, even myself, had this like terrible view of atheism. Like it's this conscious decision to not believe in something. When in reality, what it is, look, I need more proof. Especially for something like God, that you're going to base all of these different actions and emotions and telling people what to do and wars and all of these things on something that,
Or you
know,
kill people in the name of...
nobody has had actual evidence. There is nobody alive today that has tangible evidence, in my opinion, right, of the existence of God. And
Of
it's not
any
just,
God.
right? And it's not just the like saying that there is no God. It's also saying if there is a God, what kind of God is he? Because Islam claims he is an all-merciful, all-knowing God. Okay, so an all-merciful, all-knowing God will still allow certain societies to continue suffering, and children in this area of the world and people in that place of the world, and then they find ways to justify, oh, it's because, you know, a test. Like, okay, I know some people who should be tested who ain't, you know, like, what's going on? So, I don't know, I just sort of like...
What got you to that point where you started to question everything?
Well, I did have a friend that was atheist, and he told me, okay, look, Kurt, he's like, when you come and you become an atheist, come and talk to me. And I'm going, oh, that's never going to happen. And it did. But
Yeah.
I think mostly it was because I felt as I started, the first thing that happened was I stopped praying. I would pray a couple times throughout the day. Because, you know, before, of course, I'm devout. I'm praying 5 times a day.
Yeah.
What stops you?
It wasn't a conscious decision. It was just, oh, yeah, like, I didn't have time. Like, it would slip my mind. And then I thought,
It was
wow,
no
that's-
longer kind of like front and
Yeah.
center.
And I noticed as these things, which I now see as arbitrary, started to sort of fall off.
You
I
became happier?
Freer. I became happier. Everything became more clear. How I should treat my children. How I should, you know, act in public. The things that I want out of my life.
Are you
the
kids
way
Muslim?
That, yes, they are at the moment. And they know that I'm sort of not because
Does
I
that-
talk very openly to them.
Does that
about-
bother you?
No, not at all.
Okay.
I have told them, I said, look, I know you guys have noticed that I don't pray. I know you guys have noticed that I don't do this, I don't do that. I said, but I want you to understand. At your age, I knew a lot about Islam. I was the 12-year-old kid that would sit in a circle with all the old men listening to them talk about hadith and Quran. I can recite you various verses. I can tell you the meanings of certain things. I know Islam. I'm very comfortable saying I know Islam inside and out. All of the major, most important parts. With that knowledge, I told my children, now I can decide to accept or reject. You are not allowed to reject something just because I do.
Yeah.
You need to have a reason. You know, you understand how it works and why it works, and you say, that is not for me. That's different. I go, but I don't expect you to just be Muslim. Now, of course, their mother wants them. We're a Muslim. Ever since we got the divorce, she kind of took a really hard, you know, right. And I think, I justifiably so. I think it was more, you know, the pendulum swinging the other way. Yeah.
She's like, I'm going to make sure this time
Yeah,
it's...
right. And you know, I look back on a lot of things and I really do regret certain things that I did. Like, for example, because of the religion, my wife told me, my father brought a mariachi band to all of my sisters and brothers' wedding. Can he bring a mariachi? Like, no, we're Muslim. We don't have music. It's haram. And I mean, I was like adamant. I was like, hell no, we're not gonna have a mariachi band. It's so non-Islamic. And looking back, I'm like, why the hell didn't I just let her have a goddamn mariachi band? Like, it would have made her family happy. It would have made her happy. But it was one of the things she compromised,
Yeah.
because of me. And looking back, I kind of wish I had arrived at all of these conclusions before that, so I wouldn't have put her through so much. That's the only thing.
So you said that you thought it was all going to be roses,
Yeah. So I come to find, she kind of would stop talking to me on the phone, and I'm like, okay. And then, like, I don't think that's a good idea. And I told her, why don't we go out? And then by this point, she's seeing a guy already.
Okay, how soon after?
I want to say probably less than a month. Now,
Wow, this
now,
woman,
let me
this
tell
this
you-
woman is like,
Straight quick.
but what I mean is, she became Muslim within 3 months of becoming Muslim. A man drops in her lap that wants to marry her. She is in a process of divorce. A month later,
Right.
So
Now, I remember
the
her-
universe is very
Absolutely.
loving to her.
It is. And let me
Do you
tell
know
you
what I
though,
mean?
she used to say to me, I remember her mom, we were sitting with her mom one day and they were gossiping about some lady. And, I didn't really listen to the story that they were saying. All as I remember my ex-wife saying, wow, she turned to me, she said, oh my God. I said, what happened? She goes, look, just please, if you ever divorce me, she says, just do it before I turn 40. We got divorced before her 40th birthday, like the year that she
Wow.
was going to turn 40. And for her, I know she always had this fear of like this like ticking clock of like, nobody's going to want me. I'm going to be alone forever. I'm going to be, and that's why she jumped straight into this relationship, with a guy who was, I think, about 10 years younger than her.
Okay.
So,
I'm going to ask a really possibly raw question.
Yeah, go
Do I have permission?
yes, absolutely.
You like to ask the raw ones.
It just
You go deep.
I love a
Go on,
challenge.
go.
no, but do you feel that you sort of stole her life in
Yes,
a way?
I do feel that way.
Wow,
that
that's
way.
heavy.
I do feel that way because I thought I was giving her this like amazing life, and one day you just whoop, pull the rug out, And I remember her talking about, like she was so focused on me. She was so focused on how I was feeling and what I was going through. And at one point, she even told me, "Wow," she goes like, I don't remember if she said I hate your dad or I blame your dad, but she like, because I went through quite a bit as a kid, being called names, some very not nice names as a kid, and I took a lot of that to heart. I was a very
From your father,
yeah,
or?
from my father,
Okay.
from even maybe my cousins, from people at school, and that's what led to me, hiding. And essentially, I found out I used Islam as a cloak. It was a cloak. Like, he's Muslim, of course he's not gay. Like,
Yeah.
that was kind of like the understanding.
And she resents your father for that. Slightly.
Yeah, I think she really does, or did at least.
Yeah.
And so we got divorced, and she told me, look, she's like, you talk to your family, you tell them whatever you need to tell them. She's like, this is you, this is your deal. So
Yeah.
I'm like, but she says, but what we're not gonna do is tell your family that we're getting divorced. We're gonna get divorced. We're gonna
then-
complete the process, and then you're gonna tell your family. And she was just always, even back home, my family she's always so perceptive and so like socially adept, and she was always moving pieces and getting people together. And she, one of my oldest cousins, one of my favorite cousins, who's very wise and whatever, like we always see him as like the sage in the family. He went up to my wife one time and he told her, you're the glue that holds our family together.
Wow.
Because she would call everybody.
Yeah.
She would get my grandmother to come, my aunt. She would patch things up between people. So she was always very adept at those things.
The one to engage.
Right. So she saw my family and realized, some of the flaws that they have. And she says, just don't tell them yet. Wait till this point to tell them. So I tell my mom, hey, by the way, I'm divorced. What? And everybody's like, what? Now, keep in mind, we were the idol couple. We were the power couple. So it
Like, how
literally
could this
came out
happen?
of nowhere, And people felt offended. And I was offended that they were offended. I'm like, I'm not doing this to you. Like, this isn't...
But it felt
It's
like
my marriage, but it did feel like that for them. I had a cousin tell me, like, oh, well, a marriage is work. You have to... I'm like, hold on. I've been married for 14 years. You've been married for 6. Like, why are you...
Yeah.
Why,
How can you
what
tell
is
me?
this? And so, but why? But why? They demanded to know why. They absolutely demanded to know why. And they felt I owed it to them. So I told them I cheated on her. I looked back on that and I went, wow, what a world. I mean, isn't it crazy that
You would
they
rather
were
be,
more I would rather, and they would rather me, or at least I perceived
Be
that
a
they would
cheater
rather me be a
than
cheater
gay.
Than be
than
gay.
gay. You know, and I thought that's just tragic. So I told them I cheated, and my family went, oh, well, okay, you know. So they couldn't argue against her. I didn't want them to say anything bad about her.
Yeah.
If anything was gonna come, it was gonna come back at me. Little did I know, I found out later, they were sort of talking amongst themselves, going, do you think no, he would never. You know, they knew me at least that well.
Yeah.
And as I, you know, go through this whole like divorce thing, and my family is sort of asking how I'm doing and what's going on, like I'm, you know, meeting people, I'm doing things, I'm, you know, I'm working out a lot, I'm, you know, living the life I want, and I get to a point where I just go, oh my God, what have I done? Like, and I remember lying in my studio alone, crying my eyes out in bed, thinking of my kids, thinking, what have I done? Like, I've ruined their life, I've ruined her life, I've ruined my life. For what?
Well,
For what?
it's
You know,
also
like,
it's also the fear, isn't it? It's
right.
Like it was safe back then.
I told myself, like, I said, all I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna live like a gay person. Like, I'll meet guys once in a while, I'll pray, and that's it. And I thought, well, if I'm gonna do that, like, what does my life have? I have nothing. I don't have my kids. So I remember just crying my eyes out for, you know, probably a few weeks. Then, you know, I'm working out, I'm seeing my kids, I'm, you know, working things out, I'm figuring things out, finally living on my own. Because I didn't realize even at that point how much she even took care of me.
Yeah.
Because I was the man, you know, I had the salary, here's the money, and I would just hand her the money, and I would sit in
She
my
was running the
chair.
house.
She was running the house. She was paying the bills. She was doing the budget. She was going, look, we can't afford this. We can't afford that. She was like, I tell her, oh, I really want to go travel there. She'd be like, are you crazy? And then she would be planning it.
Yeah.
She would plan for me the things that I wanted. Even she would tell me we couldn't have them. She would find a way to get them. And I love her for that. You know, she spoiled the crap out of me. She really did. I cooked a lot at home. I did contribute. Of course, I was a cook and a clean. I took, you know, paternity leave to take care of the children. So I wasn't a deadbeat dad or anything.
Yeah.
But I remember her telling me, you know, you were born to be a dad. And I, like, just the little things of encouragement that she would give me, and the way that she would, you know, like, oh.
She really is incredible.
She really is. And so, you know, I'm crying my eyes out, and I somehow come out of this depression. And I say, you know what? I'm going to travel. I've always wanted to go to Japan. She never wanted to go there, so I'm going to go to Japan. I planned a trip, and I end up going to Thailand and Japan. And I plan on, you know, doing some things. I'm like, I'm going to travel alone, and I really, it was very liberating. The fact that I was on my own, the fact that I, you know, was able to have the type of vacation that I wanted, where I go to a place and I just start walking. And
It's the first time you would have been alone your entire life.
Entire life. I'm living on my own. I'm paying my own bills. I'm cleaning my own apartment. I'm cooking for myself. I'm shopping for myself. I would go up on bike rides at night just for no reason and come back. And I loved it. I'm like, this is the kinds of things that I think every person needs to do before they even think about moving in or marrying someone, so that you understand who you are, so that you understand, you know,
your boundaries.
Yeah, exactly. All of that. And all of that I reflect on my children now, because, you know, I allow my children to do certain things. They talk about boyfriends, girlfriends. And I remember my daughter saying, Daddy, you know, this boy asked if, you know, I want to be his girlfriend. And I told her, what do you want? She goes, well, I kind of like him. And I said, well, I go, look, I love the idea of you having a boyfriend because I want you to learn people. I want you to learn how the world is. And I want you to learn what you want from life, from a relationship, what your boundaries are, you know, so that you can set those and you don't just say yes to people for no reason. I told her, I want you to be able to navigate yourself and navigate this world. I go, and if you really feel, because I know my daughter, she's very, you know, studious, she's very into school, and so I thought that would be something good for her, and so far it has been. And she's open to me about everything. She talks to me about many, many things. So
what is life looking like today?
Life today is amazing.
You can tell by the smile that just literally
I
engulfed
have
your
an amazing
face.
job. I talk to my ex. You know, sometimes we call on the phone. She messages me, jokes back and forth. Her family is amazing. I remember when I told them about the divorce, they were like, okay, are you okay? That was the only question they had. Are you okay? They're like, as long as, you know, she's okay with you and you're okay with her, like, we have no problems. You're part of our family. I even went to visit them the last time I was in the U.S. And I've got my 3 wonderful kids. They know I came out to them about being gay against the wishes of my ex-wife, but it was doing lots of damage.
Yeah, you can't.
My
You
kids
got to
didn't
live. You got to live an authentic
They
life.
didn't understand why I was apart. My son started crying. He said, when are you and mommy getting back together? And the whole question of gay and all of that stuff.
But it would have also just taken you back to where.
Right. Why would I wanna be there?
Everything that you
Exactly.
were
Agreed.
freeing yourself
Why
from,
would I
all the
wanna be
lies.
there,
You
right?
can't.
So I sat them down, and I remember thinking, because people back home think we don't want gays around us. Like, they feel like it's infectious. And I'm
Yeah.
going, look, if it were that easy, I would be straight. Honestly, like, if you experience this, like, there was even a situation in my family. I have a few gay family members, you know, and they were brave enough to bring around their significant other and introduce them as a friend. Once the family caught on, they were like, oh my God, you shouldn't force our children to be exposed to that. And it was like, hold on. Wow. If it were that easy, there wouldn't be gay people. Like, you know what I mean? If it were that easy. Like, because we're constantly surrounded by heterosexuals and you know, stuff that happens on TV. It's just that, you know, people nowadays in any religion, in any community, in any culture are feeling more, you know, bold in being themselves. So I told my children, this is what my ex was worried about. I don't want them to, you know about that world. They were sitting at my apartment one day watching Nickelodeon, and my son made a comment. He said, oh yeah, that's the guy that likes boys. And I went, right there. He knows.
Yeah.
So the following time when he was crying and he said, when are you and mommy getting back together? I sat them down and said, look, I said, I'm going to tell you something. I said, your mommy prefers that I don't tell you. I said, but I feel like I need to tell you because I want to be honest with you about everything. My son was about 7. Youngest daughter was about 5. My oldest was 12 or 13.
So it's quite a different age range.
Yes, very big range. And I said, Daddy likes boys. I said, Daddy has always liked boys, ever since I was very young. I said, but I'm Muslim. I said, you know how that is. I said, I grew up Muslim. I wanted to be a good Muslim always. I wanted to pray. I wanted to do all these things. I said, and I met your mommy. I said, and she's a wonderful woman. I said, so I married her. I said, but I couldn't help it that I still like boys. I said, and I couldn't do that to your mommy, and I couldn't do that to you. And at that moment, my son went, okay, and they all just jumped on me and they hugged me. Oh my God, the tears.
Did you
I couldn't
bawl your
I
eyes
was
out?
bawling my eyes out. And they just understood. And
A 5-year-old understood.
I
then,
mean, I was just saying, like, I've been,
Can we take a moment? A 5-year-old
Yes.
understood.
right.
but I've had the privilege to be around your kids, and they're the most intelligent,
Thank you so much. I
endearing,
really-
incredible
that means
children.
so much to me. Yeah.
5-year-old
Yeah, but-
understood, but an entire, like, population of adults
Right.
just don't get
Yes, yes. Because
Do you know what I mean?
Right, right.
Wow,
the
yeah,
thing
actually,
here.
yeah,
it. That's what I'm
That's the
saying.
thing.
That's
Yeah.
why
But a
I keep
5-year-old can
repeating it.
understand
A
it.
5-year-old
Understood
understood.
that. Right.
Wow, yeah.
Yeah.
It's
So I
powerful.
was just, I felt so blessed at that moment. I'm getting emotional now just even thinking.
Oh, get emotional way. We
But
love it.
it's just, it was beautiful. It was a beautiful moment. But I knew because I know kids and I know psychology of kids and things like that, right? So I knew that at some point this was gonna like have an effect, right? So about a week later, I remember I was at Yes Mall, and my phone rings, and it's my ex-wife. So I answer, I say hello, and she says, yes! And her voice
Yeah,
was
she just screamed because she found out.
I can't believe you told him. He's crying over here. He's in tears. I said, yes. It's like when you have a bad dream or you watch a scary movie as a kid, and you're like, oh, this isn't scary.
Takes a
It
moment.
takes a
And
while
even
to
that
play
night,
out.
it doesn't scare you, but
Takes a
maybe
moment
3
to
or 4.
digest.
It took him a while to digest. And I remember my son called me after that. Daddy, I'm so sorry I got you. I said, no, stop. I go, you do not be sorry ever. You are never going to say sorry for talking to your mommy. You're never going to say sorry for talking to me. I go, you feel what you feel, and that's it.
Yeah.
I said, do not apologize.
It's all valid.
I go, if you feel that you need to speak to mommy about things, I want you to do that. I want you to tell her anything because she's a safe place and I'm a safe place. And he said, okay. He felt so bad. I told him, no. You if you want to talk about it to her, you talk about it to her, or you talk about it to me. But after that, it was fine. And my kids, I'm in a relationship now. I've been in a relationship
I was
for
going to
4
say
years.
before we close this,
Yeah.
into this,
We're here for
I
it. It's a great-
want to
a great
know,
topic.
love.
Love. That's one of
Did
the
you finally
biggest
find
reasons.
true
I did.
love?
I did. I found true love in the most craziest of ways. Like probably the most, I don't know, maybe the most like regular way.
Normal
like,
way?
Like sort of very Hollywood sort of movie
Yeah.
it felt like. On this travel that I did, I went to Japan. And
The one where you're going to go and try and find yourself.
Right, I'm gonna just.
And
I'm
you
not looking
did-
for
or you were
anything.
gonna do
yeah,
things.
I've convinced myself I'm gonna do things. I'm not looking for love. I'm just gonna have a great time. So I remember the very first time I was flying from. So I did Thailand for a bit. My last night in Thailand, I thought, let me check out this whole Grinder thing. You know, because in the UAE it is.
What is
Yeah.
this?
So I open Grinder and I meet somebody. My last night in Thailand, I'm like, oh, Grinder's kind of cool. So then I fly to Japan. My second night in Japan, I open it in Osaka, and this tall hunky, gorgeous Vietnamese guy. I'm like, oh, so I start chatting with him. And he's like, come over. So I'm like, okay. So I come over to his place. We have a great night. And we went out to dinner. And then I remember I'm talking like I'm talking now. Like, and back then, I was telling everybody my story. Because people would just kind of look at me. So I remember we're lying in his bed. And I'm telling him my story. I'm like, yeah, and this and that and that and that. And he's just staring at me. And I can't read him, right? Because I'm not very familiar with, Far East Asian culture and everything. So I said, oh, I'm so sorry. I said, I'm talking to him. She says, no, I like this. He's like, you're very sweet. I said, oh, well, thank you. And he goes, stay with me. I had never asked or been asked to sleep over at anyone's place. And I thought, you know what? Screw it. Yeah. I said, yeah. I please, when I tell you, I had the best sleep of my life in a twin-size bed. I woke up, I couldn't believe it. I remember when my ex-wife and I would cuddle in bed, like, I remember just feeling heavy and feeling like, okay, like, she would put her leg on me, and I'm like, I would tolerate it, and then I'd go, okay, it's hot, and I couldn't explain it. I said, oh my God, I said, that was the best I've ever slept in my life.
You finally felt at peace.
I felt at peace.
That's because your soul finally came
Right.
back. Your soul would have like escaped your life and been sitting out in the ether going, I ain't living this life.
Yeah.
So he tells me, hey, tomorrow I'm going to go to the beach. You want to come? I said, look, I'm so sorry. I go, I'm going to Kyoto. Then I've got Tokyo after that. I was like, he goes, okay, have fun. So I leave. So I'm in Kyoto, and he messages me, and he's like, so how's Kyoto? I was having a horrible time in Kyoto. I was lost. It was hot. There were too many people. I go, my hostel stinks. He goes, come back. Osaka's only a 40-minute ride away. And I told him, you know what? Yeah, I'm very impulsive, by the way. So I said, you know what? Yes, go straight back to my hostel, pack up my stuff, tell him I'm checking out. I leave and go back to his place. And we have a great time. He takes me out to dinner. He says, tomorrow I'm going to take you hiking. We go hiking. We have an amazing time. I tell him about my childhood. He tells me about his. He even coached me through like some gay stuff, right? Like feeling scared. He says, hey, he goes, this is Japan. He goes, and people may be conservative. He goes, but nobody cares here. Yeah. He goes, you can be yourself. And I'm like, okay. Because I remember feeling like this is the first time I'm being gay out in public.
You were a baby gay.
Right.
You're
exactly.
green.
I was a baby gay. I did stuff behind closed doors, but this is my first time being with a person who I feel romantic with in public. So I'm walking, and he says, I remember we're sitting down in front of a waterfall, and he says, kiss me. And I look at him and I go, wow.
Like, can we?
I said, no. He goes, nobody cares. He goes, if you want to kiss me. He's like, you should kiss me. So I go, okay. So I kiss him on the cheek, right? And he goes, do it again. So then he snaps a picture. And this picture I have in a frame even now on my nightstand. And he says, this is Japan. Like, you can be yourself. I had this feeling that somebody was gonna find me and tell my aunt or tell my father, and it was such a strange feeling. I'm in Japan. There's no way my family's here.
But what a simple statement, but for you would have been such a profound statement.
You can be who you are.
You can be yourself.
Right. So we're walking, and he says, if you really want to hold my hand, he's like, you should hold my hand. And I'm like, okay. So
this is
I
like
grab
way
his
out of
hand.
the comfort zone now.
Right, way out of my comfort zone now. So I'm grabbing his hand. And there's this like older Japanese couple, right? That we walk past them, and like he feels me like I guess he feels me like nervous, and he goes, "You're doing great." Like he coached me through that, right? So we passed this old Japanese couple, and I'm like, okay. At that moment, a huge hornet about this big lands on my head, and I go, ah, and he's like, oh my God, hold still. I'm like, okay. Japanese couple comes up, and they're saying something in Japanese, and he says, they say not to run. I'm like, I'm not running. I'm panicking, and I have this like small towel around my neck, right? And I go, at this moment now, I can feel it sort of like biting a bit, like it's doing something, and I don't like it. I go, it's biting me. He grabs the towel from my head, and he like swings it, and it knocks it off. And then we're looking around, the Japanese couple comes up, and they're giggling. They're like, oh, daijoubu desu ka? Like, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. And they're giggling, and they're making jokes, and we're laughing. Thank you so much. And they walk off. And he goes, wow. He's like, oh. So we're like, oh, that's crazy. He's like, but you see? He says, you were worried about them, right?
Yeah, no one cares.
I said, yeah. And he goes, they didn't care.
Yeah.
And they saw us.
Wow.
So we walk out. We have lunch. Then now I'm thinking, oh my God, tomorrow I've got to be in Tokyo because I've got to fly out from Tokyo, and that's far from Osaka. So we're going back to his apartment after lunch, and I start getting this really heavy feeling.
You don't want to go.
I'm thinking like I've just had like a Hollywood romance like for the past 3 days. So I start crying. As you can tell from all these stories, I'm a big crier. So I'm like walking next to him and we're going up towards his apartment. He turns and he sees me and he goes, "Oh my God, are you okay? Like, did something happen?" I said, No, it's fine. I just feel, and I'm trying to explain how I feel. Like, I know I don't love him because I just met him, but
You have a connection.
I have a connection. He goes, "Oh, baby," he says, it doesn't have to be this way. And I'm like, "Well, how else does it have to be? I'm like, I've got to fly back to the UAE, And he's like, so, I'm packing my things in my bag and I'm crying. And he's like, "It's going to be okay." So I leave. And I just feel awful. I get to Tokyo. I think I arrived maybe 11 p.m., get to my hostel. I spend the first probably 9 hours just lying in bed. And like, you know what? Come on, I got to get out and at least see some of the city because I leave tomorrow. So he's asking me, "How are you?" I was like, "I'm awful. Like, I'm sad." And he's like, "I know, me too." And so from there, I flew back to Dubai. Then Dubai, I flew back home. My family wasn't expecting me, but I flew back home. And he tells me, he goes, he's like, "We can still talk." So from that day, we started talking every day via FaceTime, Botim, whatever. To this day, every single day, we've probably not spoken maybe, 3 or 4 days in our entire relationship. But we talk every single day. No, he's still in Japan.
He's still there.
Yeah. I've been long distance for 4 years.
Wow.
So we've grown and nurtured a relationship in long distance. We travel every chance we get together.
You just recently came back.
Yeah, I just recently came back from there with him.
And the kids also went.
Yeah, the kids went this time to see Japan for the first time because he met them probably right after COVID. He came to Dubai and he met my friends and my family, my children, and everybody loves him and he loves them. And yeah, so it's been really nice.
Nice. We could be here forever.
We could
But we
be,
can't.
yeah.
Oh,
Jasmine's
Lily's
gonna
got
kill us.
such a big smile on her face. I think you just made her really happy. No, but honestly, Rocky, that was such an incredible
What a
story.
wonderful
Thank you so
story.
much. Yeah, there's so much more to tell. But yeah,
So much more. We'll save that for a different episode.
What a wonderful story to just remind people: if you don't live your truth,
Yes.
True.
it's
Yeah,
gonna
it
gonna
really
chase
is
you.
that simple. It
Yeah.
really is that simple. Be true to yourself and know who you are. That's
Yeah.
it.
Because your inside will come out.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
It's inevitable. It forces
Wait,
itself out eventually.
do you know what I mean? Like
You
that
have to show
depression, that not knowing why you're unhappy, or that's that's you trying to speak
Right.
to.
Right. And I believe in forces of, physics and nature and
The universe.
opposites attract and the
Yeah.
universe. And it's just the energy you give out is the energy you attract. And I
Yeah.
think that's just
Agree.
the law of physics. Yeah.
Well,
Agree.
good for you
agree.
for finding the courage to be you.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Cool.
Thank you guys for having me. This
No,
was
thank you.
Anytime. It's amazing. It's a good one. Thank you so much. We will see you in another
Right.
episode,
Thank
I'm
you.
sure.
Thanks.
Welcome to Rooted Within with Lili and Dan, a podcast that shines a spotlight on positive change makers sharing their stories of legacy, inspiration, and impact.